And good evening from Link NKY World Headquarters in downtown Covington. I am Michael Monks alongside Mark Payne, Link NKY politics and government reporter. Let me mute the Facebook broadcast. That's why you're getting the double feed there. My apologies, everyone. This is the second in our series of live candidate forums that we are producing for the benefit of the voters of Northern Kentucky. Tonight, we feature the three Republican candidates for State House District 68 based in Campbell County. I'm pleased this evening to welcome Paul Kloeker, Mike Clines, and Mirna Eads. Welcome to all three of you. We will have opening statements from these candidates in just a moment. For the audience's sake, I'll let you know that we are giving 1 minute for opening statements and then a series of questions posed by Mark Payne and I, in which the candidates will have another minute to respond. Should any candidate reference another candidate, we will give that reference candidate the opportunity to rebut for 30 seconds. And then at the conclusion of our questions, we offer the candidates another minute for their closing remarks. Our continuing coverage of primary election 2022 will be found at linknky.com. You can go there now and see coverage of other races across the region, as well as op-eds submitted by candidates explaining why they are seeking the various offices that they are running for. And another quick plug for our organization, the second edition of the Link Reader, our bi-monthly print edition, will be hitting your mailbox in Boone, Kenton, and Campbell counties momentarily, literally hot off the press right now. We're so excited for you to see the content that we have in store for you in this issue. Mark Payne and I will alternate the asking of questions to these candidates, but before we get started with the questions, we do want to give our guests this evening the opportunity to introduce themselves to voters with their opening remarks. As I said, we will give each candidate 1 minute. We will alternate the order throughout the duration of the question segment on who gets to go first, second, and third, so that each candidate gets the opportunity to go in one of those slots. We start with opening statements, and we begin with Paul Kloeker. Paul, welcome. You have 1 minute.
Thank you, Michael. I'd like to thank Link NKY, Michael and Mark for putting this on. Also for Mirna and Mike for joining us tonight. Paul Kloeker, candidate for state rep for District 68. I was born and raised in Campbell County, attended Campbell County High School, Gateway Community and Technical College. I'm currently serving my second term on Cold Spring City Council. This 68th district seat is being vacated by Joe Fisher. Joe has been in office in that spot for 24 years. Joe's moving on to Supreme Court race. The voting record for Joe Fisher has been one of the most conservative voting records in all of the General Assembly. I plan to follow in Joe's footsteps and continue that conservative vote. Two of my big platforms I'm running on this election are improving our infrastructure here in Northern Kentucky and pro-funding our police, fire, and first responders. Our infrastructure, I would get a lot of complaints on city council about traffic. We need to improve our infrastructure and keep improving it. Getting Route 8 back open between Dayton and Fort Thomas, and getting a southern bypass or eastern corridor across the southern part of the county.
We'll give you 10 more seconds.
All right. I just encourage everybody to get out and vote on May 17th in the primary election. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Mirna Eads. Welcome, Mirna. You have a minute.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Mirna Eads, and I'm running for State Representative 68. I live here in Fort Thomas. I'm a nurse. I'm a tax-paying citizen, just like you. I never thought politics was in the plan, but I realized that you didn't have to be a politician to be in politics. And from 2016 on, we've seen more and more of the corruption in our government, and it was just time to step up and do something. I've been fighting with school boards, holding them accountable since 2016. I started when I was living there in Boone County, and it just wasn't a good match for my son. So that's when we moved to Fort Thomas, and I put him in Highlands, and Highlands has done a fantastic job. but I continue to hold school boards accountable, not just Fort Thomas, but Boone County and Campbell County as well. I've been to a couple of Kenton County school board meetings, but and that was just in support of my friends who go there as well. But our education has somewhere went astray. Rather than focusing on reading, writing, arithmetic, obviously cursive is gone. We've got to bring that
We'll
back.
give you 10 more seconds.
But the indoctrination, that's my biggest platform, is holding school boards accountable.
Thank you, Mirna Eads. And now we move on to Mike Clines. Good evening, Mike. Thank you for being with us. You have 1 minute for your opening statement. And don't forget to unmute yourself.
Good evening, Michael, and everyone else. I'm just going to start with some personal information. I'm the youngest of 4 children. My parents are Bob and Rosemary Clines. I grew up in the Grand Slick area and lived there for 20 years. I've been married to my wife, Tammy, for 23 years. We've been blessed with 3 sons, a junior at Northern Kentucky University, a freshman at Xavier University, and a sophomore at Bishop Brossard High School. As far as education, I went to Grand Slick Elementary first grade, St. Mary's, and then Bishop Brossard High School. I got my undergraduate degree at Northern Kentucky University, and then I got a full scholarship to attend the University of Cincinnati, where I obtained my master's in education administration. Professionally, straight out of Northern Kentucky University, I went to Covenant Catholic High School, where I spent 15 years, 6 as a teacher, 4 as a guidance counselor, and then 5 as the principal. I was then appointed assistant superintendent and superintendent of schools for the Diocese of Covington, where I served for 12 years. After 27 years with the Diocese of Covington, I'm now an education consultant. I currently serve on 3 boards, the Go North Fund, the Xavier University School of Education Advisory Board, and I'm the chair of the ACT Kentucky State Organization. Thank you.
And thank you, Mike Clines. And those are the opening statements from our candidates. Again, you are watching live coverage of primary election 2022 in Northern Kentucky from Link NKY. I'm Michael Monks, joined by Mark Payne, Link NKY politics and government reporter. This is the Republican primary for House District 68 in Campbell County, an open seat with Joe Fisher, the longtime incumbent, declining to run for re-election, instead pursuing a seat on the Kentucky Supreme Court in our district. We now move on to the question portion, and my colleague Mark Payne will begin with our first question. As I mentioned at the top of our broadcast, we will be alternating between who goes first. And so we start the first question with Mirna Eads, and then Mike Clines, and then Paul Kloeker. Mark Payne, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Michael. And I just want to reiterate what Michael said. We appreciate the candidates' time this evening. And I'm going to start off with a question about election security. Secretary of State Michael Adams has repeatedly said we have some of the safest elections in the country. Furthermore, 2 bills, Senate Bill 216 and House Bill 564, were passed this legislative session, and they further strengthen election integrity in Kentucky. Would each of you talk about your stance on election integrity, and if familiar with each bill, discuss your thoughts on each?
And we start with Mirna.
Thank you for the question. So I do believe that we do not have secure elections in Kentucky. And it's not just Campbell County, but Kenton and Boone, as well as the rest of the county. What Mike Lindell and Dr. Douglas Frank talked about, I've been to several of their symposiums, but there's clear not secure elections here in Kentucky. We have more people who voted in the 2020 election than what was registered to vote in Campbell County. And this goes all the way across the county, or I'm sorry, across the country. Michael Adams says he has cleaned up the voter rolls. I believe his number is like 2,600 voter rolls that he's cleaned up. But when we have, I believe it was 5,500 additional votes in the 2020 election. But it's not just 2020. Election fraud has been happening since 1996. And they've used the US Census to figure out algorithms and so on and so forth. As to the bills that's being passed, I think we need to get away from election machines and go back to pen and paper. I know that takes a lot longer.
10 seconds.
But the way we file our taxes is a lot more secure than our elections are, and we need voter ID.
Thank you, Mirna Eads. We now move on to Mike Clines.
So I've met Michael Adams and I've heard him speak twice, and I have read the two new bills. I don't remember them, exactly. I knew they're somewhat lengthy, and I know he's very excited about it. I think he inherited somewhat of a mess. So at this point, in his short time in office, I'm actually satisfied with the efforts that Michael is making as the Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mike Clines. We move on now to Paul Kloeker. Paul.
Thanks. I think Jim Lurson, Campbell County Clerk, and Secretary of State Michael Adams have done a great job on working on securing our elections. I think it's important to, continue to stay vigilant on those elections. I think Kentucky has one of the most secure elections of all the states. Definitely in the 2020 presidential elections, seems like there were some improprieties in other states. I think there's fraud in every election. I don't know that it's widespread in Kentucky. I was asked a question about the 2019 gubernatorial election. I just don't think there's widespread fraud there. I think Kentucky's done a great job, and they continue to do a great job. And these two bills are great bills, and they only strengthen that.
Thank you, Paul Kloeker. And now to our next question. And we will begin with Mike Clines for this one, and then move on to Paul, and then to Mirna. My question is about House Bill 9, which was approved by the General Assembly, vetoed by Governor Beshear, and then overridden by the General Assembly. And this is related to charter schools. And this is a piece of legislation that specifically targets Northern Kentucky for what they're characterizing as a charter school pilot program. We don't know a whole lot of details about when or specifically where such an operation might open, but in general, I want to know your positions on this specific piece of legislation and a charter school operating in Northern Kentucky. Mike Clines, we start with you with 1 minute.
So when it comes to school choice, I think it's here to stay. And I think the sooner Kentucky can embrace that and the legislators can work with all the stakeholders, I think we could, when it comes to school choice, figure out from the data what's best for Kentucky and for Kentucky to get it right. Obviously, I worked for probably the biggest school choice organization, in Northern Kentucky. But I also prided ourselves on coexisting really well with public schools. I mean, we share facilities. We have graduates that work in each districts, transportation, work through the fiscal court. So as a former private school employee, I really relished the relationship that the private and public schools had in Northern Kentucky. Regarding charter schools, I had mixed feelings about them. If it were Mike Clines, I'd like the scholarship tax credits a little bit more than the charter school initiative. So I think school choice is here to stay, and I hope all the stakeholders can come to the table and realize that and get it right for the state of Kentucky.
Thank you, Mike Clines. We move on now to Paul Kloeker. 1 minute.
Yeah, here in Northern Kentucky, we have some great public schools and great parochial schools. I think I just saw some data that Highlands was the 5th ranked school in the state, and actually Campbell County was 19th ranked. That's saying something, in a big a state as we are. Also, we had a Campbell County student that scored a perfect score on the ACT. I think our public schools are doing a great job. If there's people out there that think the charter schools, would be good for them, more power to them. I send my kids to public school. I attend a public school. I think we need to keep funding those. If somebody wants to do a charter school, that's fine, but I don't think it needs to be funded by the state.
Thank you, Paul Kloeker. And we conclude this question with Mirna Eads. Mirna, 1 minute.
So school choice, I fully support. I think if any parent feels that the school is not doing their job appropriately, that they should be able to move their child to an appropriate school that will, whether it be another school in the county, whether it be an independent school like Highlands, or I'm sorry, Fort Thomas is, or whether it's homeschooling or a charter school. The money, whether it be taxpayer money that follows that child, I think is a good idea. Any school that thinks, and I know it's a concern here in Fort Thomas, if the taxpayer money that follows the student doesn't come to Fort Thomas, you know, what's going to happen to our schools? But I think that money is a good driving force for schools to step up their role as educators. Not every teacher is out there to indoctrinate our kids, but there's a lot of indoctrination going on in our public schools.
Thank you, Mirna Eads. Again, you are watching live coverage of primary election 2022 in Northern Kentucky from Link NKY. I'm Michael Monks, joined by Mark Payne, Link NKY politics and government reporter. Tonight's forum features the Republican candidates in the primary for Kentucky House District 68. And I suppose it's appropriate that a big truck drives by the office as we proceed to our next question, which we will begin with Paul and then Mirna and then Mike. And this is about infrastructure. I'd like to know what you think are the biggest infrastructure issues in the 68th district that you would hope to address as a lawmaker. And Paul, we'll start with you. 1 minute.
So as I said in my introduction, you know, Route 8 in between Dayton and Fort Thomas, you know, it's kind of like a bypass when there's traffic on the interstate from the Brent Spence Bridge, which I'll get to in a second. But, you know, I know it's going to cost a lot of money, but we just got a lot of federal funding. You know, I think the people of the 68th district would use it. We got a lot of positive feedback on that. Second part would be for the southern end of the county. Also would address traffic issues, encourage job growth down there. You know, getting a, you know, southern bypass, you know, maybe 536 from Independence all the way over to the Double A Highway. Or, you know, we also talk about Eastern Corridor, something that goes all the way over to Ohio. I'm not sure that will happen in the near future, but a piece of infrastructure is not in the 68th district is the Brent Spence Bridge, but guess where all the traffic ends up when the bridge is down? You know, it lands right there on 471, smack dab in our district. So I think that's really important to get that project going. Sounds like it's being funded. You know, if elected, I would, you know, make sure that you know, we put the shovels to the ground and get that project started.
Thank you, Paul. We move now to Mirna Eads. 1 minute, Mirna.
Infrastructure is obviously very important. We have roads that have potholes and we're paying taxes on that. We're paying taxes on our vehicles. We're trying to keep them maintained. The roads have got to be fixed. Route 8 is a big problem. We've got, you know, parts of Route 8 that are shut down that is impeding the traffic, like Paul had said. We also have to get our bridges up and running, especially the Ben Spence Bridge. As far as the funding goes, there is federal money there. There's also state money. You know, we pay our taxes for the state to fix those roads and they're not getting fixed. So when I get to Frankfort, that will be a big thing. We've got to hold budget accountability and wasteful spending and make sure that those allocated dollars that go to our roads department is going to fix our roads.
Thank you, Mirna Eads. We conclude this question with Mike Clines. Mike, you have 1 minute.
So infrastructure is obviously a national, state issue, and District 68 is no exception. I will say I was very encouraged by the state transportation and road plan and the money's allocated to the different Northern Kentucky projects. You know, I agree Route 8 was a problem when I would travel from Bishop Brossart to play Dayton in high school back in 1985. And other than it not being open, not much has changed with Route 8. So I really don't have a solution for that. I looked into Kentucky 536 in 2016, they did a study, and at the time it was going to cost $84 million to complete Kentucky 536, which I think it's a brilliant idea. I would probably double that now and say it's, $170 million project. So, I've been around long enough to know that, money drives these projects, and that's where we would have to start. We'd have to start with getting a seat at the table. We're very fortunate that Northern Kentucky has South Santoro, leading the way when it comes to transportation. And then, Alexandria is growing. Southern Campbell County is growing. Some kind of bypass. Cynthiana has a bypass. The question is, why can't Alexandria have a bypass? So we certainly have infrastructure issues.
10 seconds.
Yes, and I think we need to get a seat at the table and then work on the funding.
All right, thank you, Mike, for that. I am pleased now to offer my colleague Mark Payne the opportunity to ask our next question, and we will begin with Mirna Eads on this one, and then move to Mike Clines and then to Paul Kloeker. Mark, take it away.
The legislature passed House Bill 3, the omnibus abortion bill, this session. The governor vetoed the bill, only to be overridden by the House and Senate. Currently, there is a temporary injunction on the bill to prevent its implementation. Would each of you give your stance on abortion and your thoughts on House Bill 3?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. So life begins at conception, and it's my stance that I'm going to do everything I can to protect the life of the unborn child. One of the best responses that I've had from talking with other citizens is, well, what about the life of the mother? What about her choice? Well, as a nurse, I've been a nurse 22 years. If the mother's life is in danger, that's a whole nother ballgame. But to use abortion as a contraceptive is not okay. That life that is in the womb that God created needs to be protected, and they are privy to the same rights and liberties as every other person is: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And so abortion is, in my book, is not okay, and it's not a form of birth control.
Thank you, Mirna. We'll move now to Mike Clines. You have 1 minute for this question.
So, I love the Humanity and Healthcare Act, and I love that, that Adia Wishner is championing it. When it comes to pro-life, I've lived it. I've been to 9 National March for Lives in Washington, D.C. I've attended pro-life banquets for essay contest winners. I've been involved in curriculum, pro-life curriculum, and also guest speakers, and work side by side with the pro-life department. So I've lived it. I'll continue to live it, and I'm very excited about it. I'm not excited about how it has been held up, but I'm very excited about it. And I was actually there in Frankfurt the day it came out of committee. So wonderful.
Thank you, Mike Clines. We conclude this question with Paul Kloeker. Paul, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. So I'm pro-life. Also been endorsed by Northern Kentucky Right to Life. I support the House Bill 3 and would support it. If something happens with the temporary injunction, I think that it's interesting to see what happens with it, over the next year. Hopefully it goes through, but if it comes back up, I would support a similar bill again.
Thank you, Paul, for that response. And we move on now to another question. This one will come from me. We'll begin this one with Mike Clines and then move to Paul Kloeker and then to Mirna Eads on this one. We did see legislation proposed in Frankfurt yet again related to access to legal cannabis, either medically or recreationally. It looks like the General Assembly decided that the best path forward this time was to create a commission to further research what those options would mean in Kentucky. And we've also heard Governor Beshear talk about possible executive action, at least in regards to access to medical cannabis. So I want to know from each of you, with the 1 minute allotted to you for this question, your position on both medical and recreational cannabis access in a legal market in the Commonwealth. Mike Clines, we start with you. You have 1 minute.
Okay. So when I filed on January 15th, the three biggest issues that have come to me are sports betting, school choice, and medical cannabis. So anecdotally, I have a former student who has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The only way he can eat is if he takes a medical cannabis, or it's a gummy. So a lot of people have reached out to me anecdotally about medical cannabis. As far as I'm concerned, the House has passed it, and it's now up to the Senate. So if I were to make it to Frankfurt, I don't see the House not passing it again. So, and I do think the constituents of District 68, I think the ones I've talked to at least are in support of it. Again, I think those three, the sports betting, medical cannabis, and school choice, are here to stay. And I think Kentucky needs to get it right.
So that's your position on medical. I wanted to hear a response on recreational as well.
Oh, on I would say no on recreational. I think at least in the beginning, it should be regulated. And I think the medicinal purposes, I think, would benefit, some people who are really ailing in their health.
All right. Thank you, Mike. And next we move to Paul Kloeker. Paul, you have 1 minute.
So kind of surprising the most, but I actually would prefer recreational over medical. We don't tax any other kind of medicine right now. I think it does help some people, but it should probably be used recreationally, similar to the way alcohol is used. As far as Governor Beshear goes, I don't think that he should be using executive order to legalize a recreational drug. I don't think that's what those powers are for. So I would not support him legalizing in that manner.
All right. Thank you, Paul. And we conclude this question with Mirna Eads. Mirna, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. As a nurse, I 100% support legalizing medical marijuana. As far as recreational marijuana, I'm not a big fan of. I know people that use recreational marijuana, and in the past, they've showed up to work under the influence of recreational marijuana. One, it stinks, but two, I don't want to be working with someone or have someone taking care of me with that. And yes, employers have guidelines in place, but the guidelines aren't quite being followed. Secondly, tobacco is our highest crop here in Kentucky. Imagine what if we started growing marijuana could do as well. And as far as the recreational part of marijuana, I don't think the penalties for crime should be as high as what they are, because we have bigger crimes that we need to be fighting rather than going after someone with a couple ounces of marijuana.
Thank you.
So I'm a no for recreation, but yes for medical.
All right. Thank you for your responses to that question. You are watching live coverage of primary election 2022 in Northern Kentucky from Link NKY. I'm Michael Monks in Covington, joined by Mark Payne, Link NKY politics and government reporter. We're also joined this evening by the Republican candidates in the primary election for House District 68, a seat being vacated by Republican Joe Fisher, who is running for the Kentucky Supreme Court this November. Those candidates are Paul Kloeker, Mike Clines, and Mirna Eads, all of whom we are delighted to have this evening. Our next question will be asked by my colleague, Mark. Take it away, Mark. Oh, and just to reiterate the order of events, we start this one with Paul Kloeker, and then we'll move to Mirna Eads, and then Mike Clines.
Starting in 2023, the income tax will drop 0.5% until it's slowly phased out over the course of 10 years. While the legislation will slowly rid the state of income tax, it widens the tax base in certain areas, such as adding a sales tax or user fee for car rental services like Uber and digital services like Airbnb. Would each of you talk about your stance on income tax?
Yeah, I think it was great that the Republicans had the supermajority and they were able to do something like this. I'm not crazy about increasing, the other taxes, basically just swapping tax back and forth. I think we should have been able to find some wasteful spending to cut and leave all the taxes alone and reduce our income tax as we go. I do like that it's progressive. Every year goes down 0.5%. I think we can continue to do that until we completely eliminate it.
Okay, and next for that question is Mirna Eads. Mirna, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Income tax. I think if we were, and I've talked with other candidates that are running for the state across the state. If we increase the sales tax to 8%, we could actually get rid of property tax. We could get rid of motor vehicle tax and still have that surplus. I also think that anyone working over 40 hours a week should not be taxed on overtime pay or bonuses. The government is getting too much of our hardworking money, and then they're wastefully spending it, and they're not being held accountable to their budgets. So although I'm in favor of lowering taxes and getting rid of as many as possible, I think if we increase sales tax to the 8% from 6%, you've got all these tourists coming through and other people visiting, that we would have plenty of surplus from that 2% increase.
Thank you, Mirna Eads. And we conclude this question with Mike Clines. Mike, you have 1 minute.
So, lowering taxes, is certainly a foundation for the Republican Party. Increasing service taxes, it's not going to be apples for apples. There's not enough revenue by increasing service tax. I've also read where states have had to drop back and punt when it comes to eliminating the income tax. So again, hopefully a future legislator, I would be looking for the legislation to get it right. These are monumental decisions that are going to impact people for a long, long time. And to say, yes, we're going to eliminate the income tax, I think it's wonderful. I think there are a lot of benefits to it. But we need to get it right. And, we have to read the bills, because, we want to lower taxes, but in the back end, taxes are going up. So I think it's a great concept. Again, I would just be looking for the legislators to get it right.
All right, thank you for that answer, Mike. We'll move on to another question now, in which we will start with Mirna Eads and then move to Mike Clines and finish this one with Paul Kloeker. And this question will come from me. I think there are a lot of debates nationally and definitely locally about what it means to be a Republican. And so I want to start this question, Mirna, with you. What is a Republican? You have 1 minute.
So we always want to talk about parties, Republican versus Democrat, what one stands for, what doesn't. In general, the Republicans are pro-life, pro-gun, pro-constitution, whereas to say a Democrat is not against those. But when I'm outdoor knocking, I tell people, hi, my name is Mirna Eads. I'm a patriot American of the Republican Party. And I say that because the Republican Party no longer represents who I am, because we have too many what we call rhinos in office. We have career politicians who want to silence us. They want to get rid of, we're seen as a threat. The citizens that elected them are now trying to take back our country. And so to say, I'll still be a Republican, but the party doesn't necessarily define who I am anymore, because I'm fed up with all the backdoor deals that's been going on in the corruption.
All right, thank you, Mirna, for that response. We'll move now to Mike Clines. 1 minute for you. And don't forget to unmute yourself. That's okay.
So that's a big question. So I'm going to try to narrow it down, because I think I've lived it. I've lived a Republican life. I think, conservative. I've had a conservative family. I'm coming from a conservative family and a conservative profession. I'm pro-life. And of course, I addressed that earlier about living it. I'm pro-family. I've been working for families for over 28 years. Lower taxes, definitely. I didn't really have to lower taxes, but in a tuition paying business, I had to make sure that we kept tuition affordable and cut when we could, so as far as, lowering taxes, and as far as Republicans, you want that money to stimulate the end, obviously you want it to stimulate the economy. So I think conservative, pro-life, pro-family, and lowering taxes are certainly things that I have lived as a Republican and would do the same in office.
Thank you, Mike Clines. We finish this question with Paul Kloeker. Paul, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, so I think anymore, there's Republicans and Democrats, just kind of like it's just a letter after your name. A lot of times when people ask me which side are you on, or what party are you on, I tell them I'm conservative. And I've lived that, even though Cold Spring City Council is a nonpartisan elected official. I've been extremely conservative there. We have lowered property tax rates as City Council the last 2 out of 3 years. As well as providing, the same city services. We'll probably look at this fiscal year lowering taxes there also. So lowering taxes is a big one, but still providing those services to your constituents. Being pro-life, pro-gun, pro-family, all the above. I think that's most of the ideals of the Republican Party at this time.
All right, thank you for that answer, Paul. I'm pleased to hand the mic over to Mark Payne for our next question.
Senate Bill 1, which is sponsored by Northern Kentucky Senator John Schickel, a Republican from Union, moves decision-making power in schools from site-based decision-making councils to superintendents. It would allow them to make major school decisions, such as on teachers, curriculum, and textbooks. It also added language from Senate Bill 138 that requires schools to teach 24 documents recommended by the Ashbrook Center, a conservative center in Ohio that says it is creating informed patriots. The list of documents includes A Time for Choosing by Ronald Reagan and a letter from Birmingham Jail by Martin Luther King Jr. Would each of you talk a bit about your stance on Senate Bill 1 and with its added language from Senate Bill 138?
And we'll start this round with Mike Clines and then move to Paul Kloeker and finish with Mirna Eads on this one. Mike, you have 1 minute.
I really don't mind the bill at all. But certainly the biggest thing that bothers me about it is it's just one more way to remove the teachers from any kind of input, decision making kind of a level. So, having read it, and that's the one glaring weakness I thought about it, that I thought came out of it, was it's just another way to remove these people who are in the trenches. I was a teacher. My wife was a second grade teacher. She's a public school librarian. So it's been in our family for 28 years. And I think the teachers are the unheard voice. And I think removing them from this, at least giving input and some of this decision making, I don't think is a positive.
All right, thank you for that response, Mike. We'll move now to Paul Kloeker. Paul, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, so I thought the bill that Senator Schickel sponsored was a great bill. Gives the control to the superintendent, which is typically hired by the school board. The school board are elected officials, and they're selected by the public. So that kind of gives some of the control back to the public, and the voting public. But it only works if you have a good school board. If anybody's thinking about getting involved, 2 places you can start are school board elections and city council elections. That's where I started out, and it's been a great experience. You get to learn the ins and outs of how government works.
Thank you, Paul. We finish this question with Mirna Eads. Mirna, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. So school board decision councils are usually made up of 3 teachers and 2 parents, ideally. Depending on the parents that get on there, usually the teachers do have a say. As far as having that power removed from the teachers, to the superintendents. I do agree with Mike on that aspect. But I think the parents need to have also a say in the curriculum that is being taught. Also, you know, as far as the two documents that you had mentioned earlier, we can't erase history, and we can't neglect parts of history that we don't like. The students need to be aware of everything, because we learn from history. We learn from those mistakes. We learn how to be a better person from those history lessons. And so we've got to make sure that our curriculum is in line, and we've got to watch what they're trying to teach our students. And like Paul said, parents have got to get involved, whether it be joining the school board or the site-based decision-making councils. Get involved and know what your children are being taught.
Thank you, Mirna, for that response. You are watching live coverage of primary election in Northern Kentucky in 2022. The election is May 17. And this is Link NKY. I'm Michael Monks, joined by Link NKY politics and government reporter Mark Payne, and our Republican candidates in the primary for Kentucky House District 68, a seat being vacated by longtime incumbent Joe Fisher. They are Paul Kloeker, Mike Clines, and Mirna Eads, who join us this evening. We have a couple of questions remaining before we move into closing statements. And for this question, we go back to Mark Payne, and we'll start with Paul Kloeker, and then Mirna Eads, and then Mike Clines. Mark Payne, go ahead.
The legislature ended the COVID state of emergency this session through Senate Joint Resolution 150. Opponents of the bill said it would prevent Kentucky from being able to receive federal funds, such as $50 million in SNAP benefits. It's important to note that the state has received a financial windfall from federal funds during the COVID pandemic, such as the CARES Act from former President Trump and the American Rescue Plan Act from President Biden. What would you have done differently during the pandemic as a legislator?
And Paul, we'll start with you for this one. 1 minute.
Thank you. You know, I probably would not have, I would not have supported any kind of mask mandates or vaccine mandates. I think the legislature did as much as they could with having a Democratic governor. Unfortunately, he made a lot of, executive orders that hurt the Kentucky people and the Kentucky businesses. So, hopefully in 2023, we can, flip back to a Republican governor. I'm hoping nothing like COVID ever happens again, but, if it does, hopefully we've got the supermajority and a Republican governor to, that's not going to enforce something that's going to hurt the Commonwealth and the businesses of the Commonwealth.
Mirna Eads, we move to you now. 1 minute.
First off, there are worse diseases out there than COVID and worse viruses. I do not support the lockdowns, the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates at all. I believe in medical freedom of choice. As far as the CARES Act money and the rescue plan money that the state received, not every dollar has been sent out. I do work in a nursing home, and I know that we didn't get all that money. And the worst part about the whole COVID situation, when we were short on PPE, I had to wear the same mask for 2 weeks straight. This mask I've put in a Ziploc bag because I know there's going to be a museum out there one day that's going to be like, hey, does anyone have a mask from the COVID era? Within the first 15 minutes of my shift, this mask was soaking wet in just the sweat and the dirt and the grime and going from patient room to patient room. It infection control 101, that was everything that goes against it, how we did this whole COVID pandemic. So, as far as, churches being closed, but bars being open was not okay.
Thank you, Mirna, for that answer. We move now to Mike Clines. Mike, you have 1 minute.
So, I certainly lived it. And a lot of times as educators and maybe decision makers, we were often faced with making the best decision from a bunch of bad choices. And the struggle was real. I think the legislators did all they could do, considering the dynamics of the situation. And I think they put some things in place now that if it ever happened again, they would certainly have a bigger seat at the table or a bigger say than what they had. I will say in August of 2020, when the governor wanted to push school back from August 17th to September 28th, I opposed that. And our leadership team, we started school on August 17th. And then as a member of the Kentucky High School Athletics Association Board of Control, I voted against Governor Beshear delaying the start of high contact sports to September 28th, and we let them play. So looking back, those two decisions were 100% correct, but I also know that we were faced with a lot of tough decisions trying to pick the best of bad choices.
And for our final question, I'll ask, and we'll start with Mirna Eads, then move to Mike Clines and finish with Paul Kloeker. And a reminder, you will have 1 minute on the other side of this for your closing statement. And my question is more about the state of public discourse. And we all know how high the temperature is in this country over the past several years, how difficult it is to talk about issues and how mean often we can be to one another. I'm wondering if, as an elected lawmaker, you would see a responsibility in addressing that, and how would you go about it? Mike Clines, we'll start with you. 1 minute.
Well, I think we're very fortunate in America to have two major parties, the Democratic and Republican Party. What's been missing is the underlying respect for each other. So I certainly would want to model that. If Rachel Roberts comes out of the 67th and I'm in the 68th, I think we could offer each other a different lens to look through when we're trying to solve some issues. So I would like to certainly bring the civility back and the respect between the two parties.
And we'll go to Paul Kloeker for this one. I apologize, I got out of order. So the order I said we would do for this question, we'll do for the closing remarks instead. So my apologies for that. Paul Kloeker, your response, 1 minute.
Yeah, so it's a crazy world out there. You don't have to watch the news for long to see what's going on out there. I think it's important that we pro-fund our police, fire, and first responders. On Cold Spring City Council the last couple of years, we've funded the police by building a brand new police station. They used to be in a house, that had a bathroom for an interrogation room and a closet for an armory. So now we got a state-of-the-art facility there, making sure that our first responders have the tools we need. Being pro-family, making sure that our children are brought up right, they know right from wrong. Hopefully, that's something we can look forward to in the future. It's part of one of the reasons I'm running. It's because I've got 2 young children and I want them to have a bright future in the Commonwealth. So I just encourage everybody to get out there and vote on May 17th to make a difference.
Thank you for that answer, Paul. Mirna Eads, we conclude this question with you. 1 minute.
So there is too much fighting, especially within the Republican Party, the Democrats. It all needs to end. We're all Americans. We all have the same goal at the end of the day, is to keep our country free, to uphold the Constitution, to defend our Second Amendment rights, our God-given alienable rights. They were not granted to us by the government. They were granted to us by God, and we need to uphold those. And at the end of the day, we need to all get along and keep America great. And why do we have so many illegals coming over here? They're obviously fleeing their socialist country to come to America that's free. So let's keep it free. Let's keep it a great place for people to come to. I'm not for the illegal immigration. My family came here and did it the right way. They became citizens of the United States. But we do have a border issue, but we need to keep America safe and we need to keep America great and free.
Thank you, Mirna. And now we will conclude this evening's conversation with your closing remarks. I do apologize again for getting the order mixed up for that last question. So we'll go back to that previously stated order for our closing remarks. This means we'll start with Mirna Eads and then move to Mike Clines and then finish with Paul Kloeker. Mirna Eads, your closing remarks, 1 minute.
So I have been transparent throughout my entire campaign. I have done all the surveys that have come to me. I'm on Ballotpedia. I am also on iVoter Guide, where I have made my positions, my beliefs, and how I will best represent the people of Campbell County. I also, as far as financials go, I have raised the least amount of money of my two opponents. By being a single mom, I've learned how to stretch a dollar. And so, you know, even though I've only raised a total up to date $7,000, and Paul, I think, is around 17,000, and Mike Clines is around 33,000. The donors, I've not taken any money from big development companies or corporations or anything like that. And I do have a couple of big donors, but what I will say is that if any of them ever come to me once I'm in office and say, hey, remember the $1,000 I sent you or the $2,000 I sent you? I need a favor. I will be the first one to pull out my checkbook and write them a check for that amount and say, here you go, out the door. I'm not for sale. And I will not make any backdoor deals. I represent the people.
Thank you, Mirna Eads. We'll move now to Mike Clines. 1 minute for your closing statement.
So I don't romanticize politics. I think it's going to take perseverance, resiliency, and persuasion. And those abilities I've been utilizing for over 28 years. Somewhat recently, I experienced a cancel culture when I was a superintendent of schools, and Nick Sandman's character was defamed on an international level to the extent where I had to get a security system for my house. So, you know, I've served on local boards, regional boards, statewide boards. I have connections throughout the state and friends throughout the state. And I've learned a lot about the state, especially with being on the Kentucky High School Athletic Association Board of Control. You know, I've served the community for over 28 years, and I certainly would represent and serve District 68 well. It's a part of me, and I'm a part of it. And when they say a lot of times about leadership, the buck stops here, throughout my career, a lot of times the buck stopped with me, and I can utilize that experience to best serve District 68.
Thank you, Mike Clines. And we conclude with Paul Kloeker. 1 minute for your closing remarks.
Yeah, so I've spent a lot of time on Cold Spring City Council fighting for the the constituents in Cold Spring. I'll do the same in Frankfort. I fought for lower taxes. I fought for improving our infrastructure. I'll do the same for District 68 and the Northern Kentucky region. So I just humbly ask for you to get out there and vote. And, if you're a Republican, then I humbly ask for your vote for me. Thank you.
And thank you all for your closing remarks. I want to remind everyone that we've got full election coverage at lincolnky.com. We'll be covering a lot of races all across the region leading up to the primary. We're also publishing op-eds from candidates in all of the races as they state in their own words why they are seeking office. We're publishing those as they come in. And in addition to tonight's forum, we continue with 4 more next week. So be sure to tune in for the primary forums for Newport City Commission, Kentucky House District 69, Kentucky Senate District 20, and Kentucky Senate District 24. We're looking forward to hosting all of the candidates in those races as well. And my thanks this evening to the Republican candidates for Kentucky House District 68, Mirna Eads, Mike Clines, and Paul Kloeker. We do appreciate you all making the time at this busy period of the campaign season to talk about these issues and to address voters directly. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And my thanks to Mark Payne, Lincoln KY politics and government reporter. Be on the lookout for the Link Reader second edition coming to mailboxes in Boone, Kenton, and Campbell counties in the coming days. We're excited to see that. And don't forget to get the daily link, our morning email. You can sign up for that at lincolnky.com. From downtown Covington, I'm Michael Monks. Good night.
Good night.